Zach, we are back. It's been a minute, but we are here to talk about the best dynasty stashes for 2025 and beyond. Now, these guys aren't necessarily going to help you much in 2024, but definitely have some upside for 2025 and beyond. But let's get right into it. Hope you guys enjoy the video. Please leave a like if you do. Comment down below some players you're looking to stash. But with that said, Zach, we're going to get to the content the people came for. What do you got for your first stash off the rip here?
I'm going to go with my guy, Ricky Pearsall. I know the Dynasty Rewind hasn't been the biggest fan, but I'm a fan, and I've been a fan for exactly every reason I'm about to list right now. No, nothing more, nothing less. But he's a developmental wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers. He's in a high-powered offense. He's playing in a system that, for the most part, like the exoskeleton of the 49ers is there for the long term, that being Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, Brock Purdy, so on and so forth. Those things are more than likely not going anywhere. The things that are going places probably in the future, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, and as of recording this, we have no idea what the resolution with the Brandon Ayuk situation is. So he could be there, he could not be there. But either way, it works for this scenario because if Brandon Ayuk is there, somebody else is not going to be there in terms of a skill position player because you look at their projected 2025 salary cap and just skill position players alone, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, and then Brock Purdy's inevitable contract extension, 70% of that team's salary cap is going to be invested in their skill position players if they keep everything as is status quo, and that's me also including Brandon Ayuk, which I think is unsustainable. So at some point, Ricky Pearsall factors into the picture. I'm not one of these people that's scared off by not having production in a rookie year. Like, I'm okay with that. You know, there's a lot of players that you can go to their rookie year and they weren't really all that successful, right? We can go to like a Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman's rookie year, he was virtually a non-factor for the Indianapolis Colts. Wide receiver 79 in his rookie season. Wide receiver 13 last year. I remember Brandon Ayuk was, I think, a borderline wide receiver 3 as a rookie. So there are these situations where there's obviously a development or a path to future opportunity, and that's what I think Ricky Pearsall ultimately is for the San Francisco 49ers. They invested a first-round pick into Ricky Pearsall. If you look specifically next year, Deebo Samuel accounts for 9% of the 49ers salary cap. He has a dead cap hit that lowers from $42 million to $15 million next year, and in 2 years, both Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel will be 30 years old. They're going to have to pay Brock Purdy close to $50 million, if not more. And I think it's going to have to be way more than that just based off the Tua contracts and the Jordan Love contracts and so on and so forth. Here's a quarterback that got to a Super Bowl in his first full season as an NFL starter. So they're going to need cap-friendly players somewhere. And all over the place, really, in terms of that roster with some of the contracts that they have now. We haven't even begun to talk about the offensive line, the defensive line. They're going to need players that are on their rookie contracts, and that will be Ricky Pearsall. Maybe it takes 2 years for this to totally come to fruition, and I'm okay with that because you're not having to pay buku prices. I looked on Dynasty Daddy for some recent trades with Ricky Pearsall. First of all, if you were drafting him in your rookie draft, it was more than likely mid to late second round. You were able to get Ricky Pearsall unless you had somebody gung-ho about it, which at that point I wasn't really doing in Superflex leagues. So if you could get him middle to end of second round, I'm all about those developmental pieces. As a matter of fact, I'm going to talk about another one later. But I looked on Dynasty Daddy. I can acquire him for Tajay Spears or Zamir White, two running backs that I just don't believe in long-term. Sure, though, I'm sure they will both have better 2024 seasons than Ricky Pearsall. I'm okay moving on from one of those for the opportunity at what Ricky Pearsall can be, or a projected 2025 early second-round pick. Didn't love that one. I'd rather it be middle to late. I'd rather keep my early second-round pick. So if I can make that a second-round pick plus something else, a later pick, a third-round pick, whatever, I'd be comfortable doing that. But I'm looking for a young player that's developing in it's a very safe ecosystem in the San Francisco 49ers. It may not be a high volume, but it is hyper efficient, and it's just a safe ecosystem for a player to have a player of a Ricky Pearsall or a Brandon Ayuk or a Deebo Samuel. At some point, those guys are going to get phased out. They're going to move on. And I think Ricky Pearsall is going to be there to pick up some of the slack.
I don't hate this, Zach. And I think the biggest crux with me with Pearsall is when people were starting to talk about him in the early second round. of your rookie drafts, your super flex rookie drafts, or even one quarterback. That's when I started to have an issue. I think mid to late second, not somebody I'm excited about because I am concerned about that pathway. But like you've alluded to here, at some point it's got to open up, and they're probably more than willing to see that open up because, like you said as well, they put that first round draft capital on him. And now I think just to kind of get into some expectations that are going to come up, because he was a first round pick, albeit a late first round pick, there are going to be extra added expectations on him that if he doesn't hit X benchmark early, this guy's trash, get him out of here. And I think for these costs that you're acquiring him at, I'm okay with, like I said, with you too, with mentioning the, preferred later second would be obviously preferred. It'd be better. Maybe you have to add something to that to get that done. Maybe you have to maybe make it a 26 second and give a 25 third, something along those lines. Maybe get a fourth back somewhere along the way. I don't hate these costs, Zach, and I don't hate the thought process here. It's definitely somebody that, not just the essence of like, hey, let's go buy this player, but if you have these players on your roster, getting these expectations in your head that these guys are not going to produce this year, more than likely. Rookies in general don't produce great their first year. It's just not something they do. Outside of a few splash players here and there, for sure. Obviously, there's going to be outliers. While it's a friendly ecosystem for him to grow and thrive and develop in, it's a tough road to get there because there's a lot of, established players in this offense. Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk is still there as of this moment. George Kittle, all guys are going to take target share, and that's going to limit Ricky Pearsall. But as you alluded to as well, give him that environment to thrive and develop in, which is something he needs, I think. With that said, Zach, I don't disagree or, I'm not gung-ho to buy him, but hey, if you still have him, I'm not dying to sell the guy either. I'm not saying like, go get him off your roster by any stretch, but moving on to mine here, I'm miffed by what has gone on with Kamani Vidal. And I know I'm very much a proponent of, hey, take into consideration what is being said by beat writers and things of that sort. This, that, the other thing, whatever the case is. I'm aware as of Monday via The Athletic, he was projected to not make the 53-man roster that is not cut down until August 27th. So there's still a lot of time that things can change. At this moment, he might not make the roster because he's a 6th-round pick who's gotten banged up in training camp preseason and hasn't had much of a shot yet. He was a quote-unquote healthy scratch, but was kind of banged up the week before, didn't have a ton of time to practice. So it might have been like which is sad to even think about, like, hey, you didn't have enough time to get practice reps in for this preseason game. But Jim Harbaugh absolutely seems like the type of coach that will do that and say, hey, you haven't got enough practice reps, so we're going to give these other guys reps. Something to think about. There were plenty of veterans and guys who are quote unquote roster locks that were sitting out that game as well, did not get run in that game. But I can't imagine the likes of Jarrett Patterson and Isaiah Spiller getting a roster spot over him. Two guys who have done nothing for no one for several seasons now. We'll have to see how the rest of this offseason goes on. I think everyone needs to realize before everyone freaks out, this was one article by The Athletic. And while it's maybe a reputable source for somebody, I don't know, but it's one article. It's not like this is 50 different people coming out and saying Kamani Vidal is trash. Everything I've been able to look up is that the coaching staff likes the guy. Greg Roman gushed about him in an interview early on in the preseason. And you see I know it's practice and, they're not playing super aggressive and all that, but he looks sharp in practice. He looks good. Let's look at his body of work as a college prospect here. So looking at his profile, let's just call it that. 1,000 plus yards his final 2 seasons, both have 10 plus touchdowns. That's something we know to kind of kick over into, bleed over into a professional career. And I know he played at Troy, not the greatest level of competition. You get it. 43 receptions and 334 receiving yards between those 2 final seasons with a cherry touchdown on top. He owned this backfield. 295 attempts in 2023. The next most utilized rusher had 67 attempts. Looking back at my production grades, Kamani Vidal logged a better raw production percentile than notable running backs in the 2024 draft, such as Jonathan Brooks, Trey Benson, Marshawn Lloyd, and Jalen Wright. And then note that production percentile, that raw production percentile, doesn't factor in level of competition, strength of schedule, all those things. But in the past, when players buck that trend of having weak levels of competition, they have the production to show for it. Kamani Vidal has that. And to, quote unquote, knock him as well, he will be a little bit older. He's going to be 23 at the end of August and was drafted all the way in the 6th round, which doesn't bode well for him. I get that. And he came in a bit small at the combine. I believe he was 5'7", on the higher end of 5'7", just under 200 pounds, but still athletically tested out at an 8.88 out of 10, which is not bad. That's 88th percentile for those of you keeping score at home. You look at this team around him, J.K. Dobbins coming off an Achilles tear. We haven't really seen guys bounce back from that at full capacity. Yes, we've had Donta Foreman. I know that is going to get thrown out in the comments. He's still been a mid running back, despite having some productive stretches here and there. Gus Edwards has been fine, but doesn't offer a full skill set. You know he's not a receiving threat. 29 years old on a 2-year deal as well. Can be cut next offseason to save $3 million, which at this moment the Chargers are set to have plenty of cap space. So the $3 million cap cut isn't necessarily guaranteed by any stretch. But I could see this backfield turning into a tandem of Gus Edwards and Vidal for the last season of Gus Edwards' deal, where Vidal takes the J.K. Dobbins role in the Greg Roman system. Then they added a back to replace the 30-year-old Gus Edwards at some point. And looking at just opportunity pathways, things like that, I don't know if there's a better back and a better system available at this value to take a swing on. And that's the thing here, is super cheap. You have bad press, anti-hype coming out on a guy. I know I don't necessarily love to buy in on that, but it's nothing. You're not paying much to get him. Go check your waiver wires for him at this point. If you have him on your rosters, like I said, you might have Vidal. He's 93% rostered on Sleeper. I'm still holding. I'm not selling him low. I'm not selling him for nothing at this point. So at worst, you swing and miss on some good upside at a cheap cost. Best case, you find value in another day 3 running back that you can either sell next offseason or later this season if he's doing something during the season, if you don't believe in them long term. So looking into the acquiring process, if your rookie draft hasn't happened, he's typically going in the 3rd round. I'd bet that's going to fall with this anti-hype coming out, everyone freaking out over one article. They say the pen is mightier than the sword for a reason. Which depending on what else is available, I don't hate, a 3rd round-ish range, but if he's going ahead of guys like Ben Sinnott, Jalen Polk, Marshawn Lloyd, can't do that. Just absolutely not. He's a 6th-round running back. Don't do anything crazy like that. He shouldn't go before any day 2 prospect, in my opinion. So with that said, some recent trades via Dynasty Daddy might give you an insight on what his value might be. Kamani Vidal for Jordan Whittington, somebody you'll be talking about, Zack. Kamani Vidal for a 25 4th. Kamani Vidal for a 25 3rd, which I can't say I do at this point. And I have trouble with this one too. Kamani Vidal for Ty Chandler. Ty Chandler has been getting positive hype most of the offseason, saying that he's going to be factored into that offense some way, somehow, alongside Aaron Jones. And at this point, depending on, we don't know exactly what's going on with the Jordan Addison injury, so that might be something where they have to feature more running game that gives Ty Chandler some more work. Who knows? I'm not going to go on that. But, with the slander from The Athletic, I'd keep an eye out on your waiver wires. You never know, shallow league, so on and so forth. If you have taxi squads, I just think he's worth a stash at this point. And if he does end up fine. It is what it is. I get it, but I'm not giving in to this one article of bad press at this point. Zack, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I think it's a bit of an overreaction that just saying Kamani Vidal is dead when everything on film checks out for me. Production-wise checks out okay, given the level of competition he faced. But, Zack, thoughts here?
Well, look, at some of these deals, like the 4th round pick, I don't think you'd have to, unless you had these over-hyper league mates for Kamani Vidal. I really didn't see him going in the 3rd rounds of drafts. Maybe the 312 if somebody got crazy with it, but I really saw him going in a lot of 4th rounds. And at that point, it's just like take a swing at somebody, right? That's what a 4th round pick is. So I don't mind if you're drafting in the 4th round. I don't mind if you're trading a 4th round. I'm not really going to do any of those other deals, though. I'm not doing Ty Chandler. I'm going to talk about Jordan Whittington here in just a second. 3rd round pick's too much for me to digest. I see the ceiling that you're talking about, and I don't disagree with you. But we also have to entertain the fact that there is risk with buying Kamani Vidal for a 3rd round pick. Like, you can get a good player for a 3rd round pick. So I'd prefer, but look, I do have a good amount of shares of Kamani Vidal, and I'm not dismayed by any means. I totally agree with you. I'm holding. I'm not selling. I've never been trying to sell. It doesn't make any sense to me. Exactly what you said. 2 guys that have done nothing their entire career are all of a sudden doing really well. Maybe it's a system. I don't know. I don't really believe it. We'll see how this thing plays out. Even if he's stashed on the taxi squad or the practice squad for the Chargers, I'm fine with that. He's a 6th round pick. Like, we got to stop expecting year one production from all these rookies and understand that things take time to develop. As I talked about with Ricky Pearsall, we've seen running backs go on a taxi squad or just be irrelevant as a rookie and do things in the NFL. And when you have a guy that costs either a 4th round pick or trade a 4th round pick, that's what you're hoping for. So it's just, take a dart throw, hope for the best in this situation. And I don't disagree. Like, that's kind of the premise of this video. But that being said, Bob, you talked about one of my guys, so I'm just going to take it from here. You talked about my Jordan Whittington. Did you have something to say?
No. I was just saying I touched on him a little bit. I didn't want to spoil too much.
Yeah, you tried to trade Mike. What's funny is that you have Jordan Whittington in your Kamani Vidal trades, and I have Kamani Vidal in my Jordan Whittington trade.
It only makes sense.
That's funny. Listen, the Rams, I would say probably in the last 3 years, the Rams have been one of the more successful day 3 drafting teams in the NFL, that being Kyron Williams 2 years ago, Puka Nacua last year, and other roster fillers for them on the NFL side that we don't really keep track of via their offensive line, defensive line, whatever it may be. But look, he probably starts the season as the wide receiver 4. Did you watch the first preseason game, Bob? He was so good. Okay, I watched it, not for Jordan Whittington, but it just happened. Like, he played with Stetson Bennett. He was phenomenal. I think he had 6 catches for 84 yards. And I'm talking about breaking tackles, extending plays. There was like a 4th down and 3 where they threw it to him at the yard line, and he broke the tackle and got the first down. Like, there were traits there that you saw that you're like, damn, that is impressive. That is awesome. He probably starts the season as a wide receiver 4 for the Rams, with opportunity to eventually work his way to the wide receiver 3. So I think the wide receiver 3 is projected to be Demarcus Robinson. Not like he's been the model of health ever in his entire career. And then we have to factor in that Puka Nacua is already hurt, and Cooper Kupp has a propensity to get hurt as he is 31 years old. So there will be, I think, at some point, opportunity for Jordan Whittington this season, but this is more of a long-term hold for me. I'm not sure how the long-term future shapes up, but he was phenomenal week 1 of the preseason. As a matter of fact, according to PFF, Bob, he was the highest graded rookie wide receiver in the preseason week 1. Now, look, of course, there's you're not really seeing some of the top-notch guys, but that still says something about some of the other rookie wide receivers that we saw. Jordan Whittington was number 1, according to PFF. How am I acquiring him? Well, I did see some 3rd-round picks. I'm not there yet personally, because he is not going to give you much of anything this season. But I did see a lot of 4th-round picks. And then, of course, I put the Kamani Vidal trade. If I could trade Kamani Vidal for Jordan Whittington, that might be a trade that works out for us both, Bob. If you want Kamani Vidal, cool, I'll take Jordan Whittington, and we'll both be happy about it. And we'll both feel good about it, which is good, because I believe in a trade, both sides should feel good about it. But this is just somebody that I didn't have any kind of radar on in the draft or anything. I'm just going off of everything. Like, Sean McVay talks glowingly about him, how he's such a mature rookie. You saw Cooper Kupp, I think, talking about him or coaching him on the sideline in game 1. Just so many positive things, so many green flags, so to say, when it comes to Jordan Whittington. And I'm never expecting him to be anything phenomenal, but I'm expecting him at some point to be a contributor to this team. And for the price to acquire, I'd like to take that shot.
I don't hate this at all. I think, like you said, I think doing a Whittington Vidal swap here might be something that works out for both sides. Could work out for both sides. I would agree, though, that I think Whittington, it's always nice when things are going the right way. You have these, like you said, green flags. I think it's an awesome way to look at it. And the pathway is certainly there. Like you noted with Cooper Kupp's last 2 years, he's missed significant time. Demarcus Robinson, honestly, as fun as he's been in stretches, not great. He's on a 1-year, very low quality roster deal or contract deal. Opportunities there. And, the same thing was going on with Puka last year, and I'm not saying Jordan Whittington is going to be anything close to that, but you see when coaches gush about players and, he does everything right, all of these, positive things, sometimes it's smoke, but sometimes it's just good to listen to. It's better to hear him saying good things than not at the end of the day. So I don't hate this call here. I like the concept of a 4th-round pick, maybe a 3rd if you're getting one back, if you feel your 3rd is going to be later anyway. and you're in a deeper starting format, you're trying to kind of set yourself up for the future, whatever the case is, because this year might be tough, depending on the health of Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, which you said is also kind of banged up right now with a questionable knee issue. The production is going to be tough this year, but hey, that's the beauty of a taxi squad. He can go where he's not going to hurt you at all this year, and something that definitely won't hurt you this year, but will set you up for the future. And this is definitely cheaty. I know my next one might be too. And I always do these with these videos. I take cop outs when I can. And part of it is I look through just my whole pool of players. I have 339 NFL players projected for the 2024 NFL season. You can get those projections at patreon.com in the gold tier. Check those out, patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. But nothing quite excites me as much as the possibility of trying to get more future draft capital on my team. And this is especially if I'm a rebuilding team. Players right now are inflated with value because, as you say, Zach, it's point scoring season. It's time to get points in your lineup. Players are more valued than draft picks are. But guess what? As soon as the clock strikes midnight on this season, that flips. It's going to be pick season. It's going to be rookie pick season. It's going to be everybody wants another rookie draft. And I want to be the dealer of the rookie picks when we get to the offseason. So I want to find ways to get these players these picks on my roster, as soon as we can. We're looking for assets that are ultimately going to increase in value. Draft capital is the only type of asset guaranteed to do that without fail every single offseason, even when drafts, prospects don't go according to plan. Every year, you can trade these picks for proven commodities because people want the new sexy hotness in your league. Every year this happens. And especially in leagues where, we get roster reviews a lot where people say, well, this league doesn't really value draft capital. Go buy all of the draft capital because, little known fact, all draft capital can eventually become a player, which is then more valued by the league. Rinse and repeat that process if they don't catch up on the idea by the time that rolls around. So some ways to possibly acquire, sell the offseason and preseason hype. I can't say that at this point I've been overly swayed by anything that's happened in preseason. I know there's been plenty of storylines out there, but I can't say anything has been a dramatic push for me. And it shouldn't be. Take in everything that, happens, but no one thing at this point is going to say, well, like the Kamani Vidal, I'm still strong on him, I guess you could say. I'm going to battle for a guy that I'm not like I'm not the Kamani Vidal guy by any stretch of the imagination, but I just don't believe in what's happening to him given the value or the upside he has. Take in all the information, digest it, and kind of go from there. And don't let one thing just oversway anything. But any excess depth I have, selling it for draft capital, maybe making some tier down trades instead of just getting rid of depth. Because, hey, if we're trying to compete, depth is going to be important at some point this season, I promise. So maybe make some tear downs where you're kind of in a similar range, but this player is getting some hype, or this player is just more exciting to somebody, but they're both going to be wide receiver 3s or 4s. Tear down, build on some hype, maybe even just upgrade picks, whatever the case is. A third round pick or a second round pick will go for more than a third or fourth the following season. Or the following offseason. So add in draft capital to any existing deals you got going on. It costs nothing to you to add in a third round pick here and there to any deal. Throw in a second, send a third back, whatever you got to do to get extra draft capital or improve the draft capital you already have, and move players that don't fit our trajectory. Whether we're rebuilding or competing, if we're competing and we fall out of that playoff race, we want to be able to pivot and sell guys that once the season strikes midnight on the clock again, their value is going to heck in a handbasket. Guys like Mike Evans going to be dead again, even though he's probably going to put up a top 15 wide receiver season again. The second the season is over, value is dead. Same with any guys like Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, etc. You get it. That's what I want to do. I want to stash some more picks if I can find ways to do it. Zach, how do you feel about stashing some 25 picks for 2025?
Who wouldn't like this? I mean, yes, I want to stash draft picks I'm trying to stash 2026, 2027 draft picks. Let me get those 2028 draft picks, man. Come on, sleeper. No, I'm just messing with you. Of course, I absolutely love this. I don't necessarily know what the draft class does and doesn't look like. And in reality, nobody does. Nobody saw Jaden Daniels at this point last year. Nobody really saw J.J. McCarthy at this point last year. So there are things that are going to happen that are going to ebb and flow the values of those draft picks. But one thing is for sure, as Bob said, is they will increase in value from this day forth. From every second after I said that, it's true. Like the picks are worth more now than they were 5 seconds ago when I said it. And that will continue to, like, now they're worth more than when I said it 5 seconds ago again. So you get my point. Love this point. Can't disagree with it. That being said, Bob, I'm going to go ahead and get to my third. And I'm just going to talk about this guy in every video because I'm a big fan. And it's Jermaine Burton. I think he fits this category very well. I know what people are saying. I don't really care that he played in the fourth quarter of the preseason game. I don't care. I really, really don't, because everything about Zack Taylor tells me he loves Jermaine Burton. Like, they're slapping the table after they draft him. Then he scores a touchdown in preseason to give the Bengals the lead, I think it was, or if not, get them close, get them back into the game, and then secured a 30-yard reception to propel the Bengals game-winning field goal drive. If I'm not mistaken, I think I have that right. Wasn't watching fourth quarter of the Bengals preseason, though. 3 for 82 and a touchdown, 158.3 rating when targeted in single coverage in week 1 in the preseason. And Zack Taylor literally said, quote, "We created a monster, didn't we?" On the sideline after the Jermaine Burton touchdown. So, yeah, give me all the stupid stats you want. That's cool. I'm going to go with, like, the head coach being stoked about his wide receiver on draft day after scoring a touchdown in the draft. And, look, I think right now it projects everything you're hearing is Andre Yoshivas is the Bengals wide receiver 3. This seems like a very complex offense that wide receivers do not pick up right away. That, like, you saw the same thing with Yoshivas and Charlie Jones last year, where they were not really a factor, even though there was at times a very big need for the Bengals at the wide receiver position. And you're seeing that with Jermaine Burton again, as they're kind of giving him more and more and more responsibility every week. They're putting more on his plate than they were the week before. At least that's what I'm reading in the training camp reports. And I'm okay with that. Like, no problem if he's not the wide receiver 3. Again, this is an offense where they've had Jamar Chase miss a lot of time. They've had T. Higgins miss a lot of time. T. Higgins could be traded at any point. Jamar Chase was not at practice today as of recording this. So there might be opportunities throughout the season. But so I want to acquire Jermaine Burton now before that opportunity increases for him, say next offseason, or say when T. Higgins is traded, or if he's traded at some point in the season. I want to be holding on to Jermaine Burton whenever that opportunity arises. So how am I acquiring him? Well, it didn't look very overwhelming on Dynasty Daddy. These are recent trades within the last 30 days. I saw Jermaine Burton for Dalton Schultz. That was a tight end premium league. I will still do Jermaine Burton because I think Dalton Schultz is going to get lost in the fold. I still think he's probably a top 15, top 18 tight end, but not a tight end 1, which is what I want out of my tight ends. I saw Tajay Spears and a third-round pick. No, I'm sorry. It was Tajay Spears for Jermaine Burton and a third-round pick. And then I saw Aaron Jones for Jermaine Burton, and I saw Blake Corum for Jermaine Burton. I probably wouldn't do the Blake Corum one, especially if I was a Kyron Williams owner, because I love having both of them. But I think almost any of those other deals I would do for the opportunity at having what I think at some point in the next year or two is the wide receiver 2 for the Cincinnati Bengals. This was a guy who had all the talent to be a first-round wide receiver this year. If you don't know that, I'm not making that up. That's not an opinion. That's what other people said that followed the draft. He had the talent to be the wide receiver 4 in this draft. He just had so many off-the-field issues. So this is a player that I've been very excited about for a long time. You know this, Bob. I've been in drafts where I've traded up to get Jermaine Burton. So I put my money where my mouth is. But this is a player that, whether it's at some point this year or whether it's next year, I do think you will get your return on Jermaine Burton.
I don't hate these deals. I'm with you very much on Dalton Schultz. I think he's absolutely somebody who gets lost in the shuffle of what the Texans got going on. And that, not really anything bad about Dalton Schultz. They just have 3 really good wide receivers in front of him, even if it's just for this year. That's going to hurt. But looking at all these deals, except maybe the Blake Corum one, I feel like, and maybe the Spears, because you did get a third with Jermaine Burton in that kickback. But Aaron Jones feels like he should be more than Jermaine Burton. Dalton Schultz, in a tight end premium at least, feels like he should be a little bit more than Jermaine Burton, or you should get a little bit more back, maybe even just a pick flip, nothing like an extra pick. So I don't know if I love those. Blake Corum, I'm with you. I have Kyron in a lot of places, so I like having Blake Corum, but I feel like if you're just moving Blake Corum, you only have the handcuff, I think that's a decent deal. Because looking at drafts, similar range in drafts, it's kind of silly if you were in a rookie draft, you drafted one ahead of the other. Why are you trading him for him now? Maybe you just feel differently about a player. Who knows? Maybe this is just you finding a way to get. Maybe you drafted Quorum ahead of Jermaine Burton for some reason. Maybe you just thought he was going to take over, and then, well, now you're trading with the Kyron Williams manager who just wants a handcuff. They're willing to give you Burton. I don't know. Either which way, the Aaron Jones one is tough. I get it. I think a lot of people are down on Aaron Jones, and I get it with the injury history, declining efficiencies and things like that in this Minnesota offense, which has been, especially now questionable. We'll talk about that a little bit before we get out of here. With the, now loss of JJ McCarthy. Now it's going to be on Sam Darnold's shoulders and Nick Mullins. Yikes. That's fun, I guess. I get it. I don't love these, but like you said in the past, sometimes that shows you that value is probably pretty darn close, where you're like, well, yeah, it's exciting. It's fun, but it hurts a little to give up what you got to give up to go get a player. So I don't hate the pick here, Zach. I like the stash. It's good. It's an offense you want a part of. I mean, you want, I know we don't always love wide receivers that aren't the wide receiver one in their offense, but if he's going to be the number 2 next to Jamar Chase with Joe Burrow slinging him the ball in a Zach Taylor offense, that sounds pretty nice. A guy I'm stashing, and this is easily the most like expensive player to go get, the most least, prototypical stashes you're thinking guys that are off the radar. Whoa, this guy is, I've never heard of this guy, depending on whatever league I'm in, whatever the case is. But TJ Hockenson is not that. And I put on the show sheet, it feels a little cheaty to put him on here. But Zach, I know you're a fan of buying low on injury dips when possible. And I think this is just that. Most recent news say that the Vikings hope for TJ Hockenson's return to be sometime, quote unquote, sometime in the first half of the season. That's not awesome. I don't love to hear that. If I was hoping to get points out of TJ Hockenson anytime this season, I'm not excited that it's taking that long to get points. But if I'm a team that's looking to next year, that's a window. That's a buying opportunity for me. So this can't be restrained to those managers who are hoping for an early return. Now we have the quarterback concerns, that we've highlighted repeatedly, but now have updated because JJ McCarthy out for the year. Done. Not going to play a snap this year. So it's going to be Sam Darnold and Nick Mullins show. Primarily, hopefully, Sam Darnold compared to Nick Mullins. But so that's going to be tough. So you have an injury, you have quarterback questions, you have offensive question marks in general. And we also don't know what's going on with Jordan Addison at this point. So right now he's undervalued, TJ Hockenson, that is, and he's accessible, which is one of the keys to being able to buy a player is accessibility, because a player can be as decently valued as you want them to be or as they can be. But if a player doesn't have some shred of incentive to sell, you're probably just not going to get it done. So if you've been stuck with mid-range tight ends, maybe like a Dalton Schultz now might be the time you can upgrade to a premium one, a guy who has put up numbers for a top 5 numbers whenever he's healthy, basically. You'll be able to stash him on IR for a good chunk of the season, but at some point you'll need to find space on your active roster, which sucks, but you're stashing a top 5 producer at a position. But by that point, when he's off IR, you'll hopefully have time to sort out at least one asset who isn't worth keeping, or you're able to trade away for some future assets. Go get some 25 capital with a player that has done well on your roster and elevate TJ Hockenson up to the active roster. So I'm making this move if I'm looking to compete in 2025 and beyond. Hockenson is still very young for the position, and when healthy, as I mentioned, consistently a top 5 producer. He was on pace for the tight end 1 last year before he was hurt. Something to think about. I know his quarterback was Kirk Cousins. We have a downgrade going forward. Even as much as I like JJ McCarthy, it's still probably going to be a downgrade for his first season. TJ Hockenson was good with Jared Goff when nobody liked Jared Goff. So whatever that does for anybody, I don't know. But this gives you an edge at the tight end position, and it helps you get a bookend at the end of your lineup. And that's something I love when I'm rebuilding or retooling, getting a bookend at a position in my lineup that I can just be done with and set and forget. It's set. It's done. Some recent trades that maybe are thrown to the wind now. Jordan Addison for TJ Hockenson. Hey, 2 injured players. What could be better? I guess just fix the position. George Pickens for TJ Hockenson. Similar value range to Jordan Addison, I think, in most cases. George Pickens probably a little bit higher valued, actually, now that I think about it. But 25 first for TJ Hockenson. Jameson Williams and a 25 second for TJ Hockenson. Love that deal. Travis Kelce for TJ Hockenson and a 25 second. I love that deal. That is a great exit strategy for Travis Kelce. If you're not looking to compete this year, you just want to get the age off your roster, set up for next year. That 25-second might be later, but man, I'm all about it. I also like considering just some trades I thought of. Give the manager in need of points a tight end that's going to score them points sooner rather than later, and probably produce decent numbers that you're with TJ Hockenson. You're hoping for he has the upside for sure, and maybe Sam Darnold finds some solace in a reliable tight end. I don't know. I think, Justin Jefferson out there being pretty reliable is going to take up a good chunk of the target share. But also like considering sending something to the tune of Dallas Goedert plus, Pat Freiermuth plus, Cole Kmet plus, Dalton Schultz plus, and that's maybe a bigger plus. But giving the manager that is in need of points from a tight end something that's going to produce sooner, something that's healthier. I don't think enough people are on the Dalton Schultz slow down wagon at this point. So that's something I would love to upgrade from at this point. And all these other guys, Cole Kmet, another guy getting lost in the shuffle, in my opinion. Maybe it's only for 1 year, as that's the length of Keenan Allen's contract. But definitely a guy I'm concerned with. Pat Freiermuth I actually like a good bit, but somebody who's still in that questionable range, you might be selling him a little low. But you probably need the least bit of plus on top of him, I would think. Maybe Goddard. But either way, Zach, tell me what you think about buying TJ Hockenson. How cheaty is it to go list this good player as a stash instead of these upside stashes? What do you think, Zach?
Well, this is an upside stash. This completely falls within the category of a stash because
thank you.
The premise of the video, if for people, let me peel back the curtain a little bit. Bob, I have to make sure I read the subtitle of the video so I know exactly what to do for the video. And it says, highlight some players that have some upside in 24, but most likely provide value in 2025. I mean, how is that not to a TJ Hockenson, right? There could, look, Bob, there could be a window. I'm not saying this is going to happen. There could be, like that TJ Hockenson injury was devastating and very late in the season. There is a window, if this keeps happening to the Vikings, where why would you even rush him back? Why would you rush TJ Hockenson back? What if the Vikings are 1-7? Why would you rush him back? So that is a scenario that could very well happen too. Like I fully expected TJ Hockenson to not be back until the middle of the season. I was not somebody that was like, yeah, he'll be back week 1. No, that was such a devastating knee injury. It looks so bad. And for him to walk off the field, dude, what a guy. Yeah. Don't say that to Michael Bauer, right? Don't say that to Michael.
Don't say that to me.
Yeah. But just I'm with you, man. This is definitely a stash. I am not going to trade George Pickens, and I'm not going to trade my 25 first. Oh, I'll trade Jordan Addison. Sure. You know I will. Yeah, I'll do any pick with a second plus or player, a tier down a player like a Travis Kelce, like you said. I'll do any of those deals. I'm not willing to do George Pickens. I'm not the biggest George Pickens fan. I think he's going to have a good season, and I'm not going to do a 25 first just because, like, you're not buying points really, TJ Hockenson. So that first may be high. But love it. I think this completely fits. I don't care what anyone says. This fits a stash 100%. Anytime you're buying an injured player that's not going to score points, you're stashing them. That is the entire, like, you were buying Mark Andrews last year to stash him for 2024. You were buying Joe Burrow last year to stash him for 2024. Same thing with Nick Chubb. You weren't buying them to put in your starting lineup. So, yeah, this fits, man. Good pick.
I love it. I appreciate that, Zach, and I appreciate all of you for watching along to this point. If you have watched this point and you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, comment down below some of your favorite Dynasty stashes for 2025 and beyond. We want to hear about it, and we want to hear from you over in our Patreon Discord, patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Get in that Discord server for a free 7-day trial. Check out my 2024 projections for fantasy football this year. 339 players in there. If you want some help with your rosters, check out the roster view option in the pinned comment or the YouTube description box below. But with all that said, Zach, all the promo in the books, we are going to get the heck out of here. We will see you in the next one. But until then, I hope that y'all have a good one.